We're live.
All right. I guess we're live. I guess we're ready to go.
Awesome.
Welcome, everybody. We're
welcome.
really excited to be here with you today to talk about the neighborhoods of Russian River Valley. We are with Gary Farrell Winery. My name is Kevin. I'm the tasting salon manager at Gary Farrell. I'm super excited to be here today with our winemaker, Theresa.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, we've got great wines that we're going to be talking about today. Hopefully everyone is a little bit familiar with Gary Farrell Winery already, but in case you're not, just a brief history of who we are and how we came to be speaking to you today. It's part of this World of Pinot Noir webinar event. We're really excited to get back to a live World of Pinot Noir event next year, but for now, I think this is a pretty good substitute. We are located in Russian River Valley, Sonoma County, California. We're in the northern part of the Russian River Valley, in this town of Healdsburg, outside of the city limits, but we are in the town of Healdsburg along West Side Road, which is where you're going to find a lot of the great Pinot Noir and Chardonnay vineyards in Russian River Valley, some of the ones that have been longest established and some of the longest established vineyards in Russian River Valley as well, all along this beautiful road. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to visit. If not, please consider planning a trip once it's a little more safe to do so. But we have been making wine since 1982. Of course, we were founded by a gentleman named Gary Farrell. Gary grew up in the central coast of California, and he moved to Sonoma County in the 1970s to attend Sonoma State University. It's what brings a lot of people to the area. And while Gary was at Sonoma State, he took biology and he learned what fermentation was. And he was so fascinated with just the concept of fermentation on a very basic level of yeast eating sugar and producing alcohol that he decided to start brewing beer in his dorm room. And he, I'm sure, made a lot of friends at Sonoma State in the 1970s, having his own beer supply to give out. And after he graduated, his degree was in political science, but he decided to follow fermentation as a career. And he started working with one of the only winemakers in Russian River at the time, was a gentleman named Davis Bynum. And so Gary started working in the cellar at Davis Bynum, really doing a lot of handyman type work, cellar work, learning under this very famous, highly respected winemaker, Davis Bynum. And Gary started making some of his own wines as well. And a lot of the growers in this area who, up till that point, had mostly been selling their fruit to wineries outside of Russian River. There just wasn't a lot of winemaking happening in Russian River in the late 60s and early 70s. There was definitely some, but nowhere close to what we know today. And a lot of the growers were really happy that folks like Davis Bynum and Gary Farrell were making premium wine locally in Russian River. Because before that, when these growers are selling their grapes to other wineries, a lot of times they weren't going into premium wines. They were premium grapes, but they weren't going into premium wines. And when folks like Davis Bynum came along, and they started to see that shift, and you started to see this slow buildup of the reputation of Russian River Valley for providing premium Pinot Noir and Chardonnay grapes. Gary and Davis started winning awards with their wines in various wine competitions. And some of the growers started going, hey, you know, maybe we should start trying to make some of our own wines and win some of these awards for ourselves. And one of those growers, it was our very first grower partner. His name is Joe Rocchioli. And we'll be talking about Joe Rocchioli a little bit more in depth today. But Joe Rocchioli and his son, Tom, decided that they wanted to start making Rocchioli wines. They had been growing grapes since just after Prohibition. They've been growing Pinot since the 60s, but they hadn't really made wine, at least on a commercial scale. So they hired Gary Farrell to come work for the Rocchioli family and help them get their wine label off the ground, help them with some of that work in the cellar, organizing the cellar, a lot of the logistical work that goes on in a winery that isn't always taught in books. You sort of have to do it and be in the cellar and live that life for a little bit. So Gary worked out a deal with the Rocciolis where instead of being paid for this service, he would receive grapes. I guess he was being paid, just not with dollars, but with grapes. Because these grapes that Joe Rocchioli was growing were really worth more than the price per ton. They were so highly sought after, and every winemaker would love to have Joe Rocchioli's grapes. And so Gary was able to secure 1 ton of Pinot Noir from Joe Rocchioli and make his first wine, 50 cases of Gary Farrell Pinot Noir, Rocchioli Vineyard, in 1982. That's what launched our entire brand. We just started with a very small amount of wine. Gary was able to sell that off, keep reinvesting his profits, and slowly build his brand organically. And for the first 18 years of existence, our wine was made at the Davis Bynum facility, where Gary was also still working, making Davis Bynum wines and also making Gary Farrell wines as a side project in the cellar. And then Gary had the chance to purchase the facility where Theresa and I are at today and build his winery. It's really fortunate that he had the chance to design and build an entire facility. So this was bare land where we are sitting when Gary first bought it in the year 2000. So our cellar is uniquely designed around the style of winemaking that we focus on, which is single vineyards. We have, gosh, it varies a little bit every year, but I think we're up to maybe 7 or 8 different single vineyard Chardonnays and maybe 14 to 16 different single vineyard Pinot Noirs. It's wonderful to have a facility that's set up to make so many single vineyard wines with our barrel room and our fermentation room and all of that. So Gary moved all of his production over here and started making the wine just here on site. He retired in 2006. And his longtime assistant winemaker, Susan, took over for a few years. And when she retired, Theresa had the chance to join our team in 2012. And we're so excited to have her here. So maybe Theresa can give us a little bit of her background in when she started in winemaking and joining the Gary Farrell team.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Great history. So yeah, just adding to what Kevin was saying, I started in 2012, but prior to that, I'm going to go backwards now. Prior to that, I was the winemaker for Joseph Phelps Freestone Vineyards. So way out on the far west Sonoma coast. When I got hired on in 2002, I was working with the team in St. Helena. So I was working on all the Cabernet, Merlot, Syrah, the Le Mistral blends, and also this brand new property out on the far west Sonoma coast called Freestone. And it was 100 acres planted in 2000 and 2001. So that first year in 2002, we picked some grapes and made some wine experimentally in 02 and 03. And so it wasn't until 2007 that they completed the winery, which is when I relocated out to Sonoma County. I love it here. I actually prefer it to Napa. It's more organic. It's just more approachable. The people are more country. It's really fantastic. So please come visit us. Let's see. So then prior to that, I was at UC Davis, and I was studying chemistry in the doctorate program. I actually spent a couple of years working on my doctorate, thinking that maybe I wanted to become a professor at the university level because I had had such great professors at Cal Poly. I went to Cal Poly. I'm from, I spent a lot of years down there. So I love it. World of Pinot Noir is one of my favorite events for that exact reason. But I studied biochemistry as an undergrad. And as I told you, went to grad school to, become a professor. But while I was there, I spent 2 years as a teaching assistant as well, teaching undergraduates. And it's at UC Davis, there are 400 undergraduates in the chemistry program. And so it took 12 teaching assistants in total to break it up into the lab sections and grade exams and stuff. And so we would get together to grade exams, and these 2 students would bring tasting glasses, little tiny tasting glasses, and wine to the grading sessions. And we all started exchanging stories. And I found out that they were in the viticulture and enology program. And I was floored when we started exchanging actual details about our project, because they were studying wine as their subject, and I was studying peptides for cancer therapeutics research. And basically the analysis was the same. We were using HPLC and gas chromatography and other methods, and it was just so similar. The science was the same, but the products were very drastically different. And so I was like, well, we have wine and we have peptides. I had already been bitten by the wine bug. I had been to Burgundy, Bordeaux, and the Rhone Valley just a couple of years prior. And so it was a no-brainer for me. So I transferred within a couple of days, and that's how I ended up in wine. Actually, I did my first harvest at Sainsbury just before I got hired on it at Joseph Phelps Vineyards full-time. So yeah, I'm coming up on my 9-year anniversary in May, on May 1st. So I've become quite familiar with these vineyards, and it just feels, this is my new home, and these vineyards feel like home to me. It's an honor for me to receive the grapes and have these growers give them to me to make wine out of them, sell them to me. That is, they don't give them to us for free, that's for sure.
There is a financial exchange, of course, but yeah, I mean, I think that the portfolio of growers that we have is really a Russian River winemaker's dream. These grapes that we're able to work with, and we'll be talking about 3 of these incredible vineyards today. And Theresa, you worked in Burgundy for a season, correct?
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, I did. So while I was at Phelps, they sent me to Burgundy in 2006 to get some international experience working on Pinot and Chardonnay, and that was really life-changing for me. And maybe I'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the winemaking.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like your story at UC Davis is not uncommon, as these people that go there and they think they're going to study one thing, and then they realize, oh, there's a whole wine program here as well, and there's so much overlap in these different sciences. And
or at Cal Poly or Fresno State.
Right. Yeah, there's so much overlap, and so much of the science is the same. And it's not even just science. I mean, there's so much history and geography and geology and all these different things that go into winemaking. You can really use wine as that lens to study whatever else you're interested in. So yeah, well, we're really happy to have you on the team here. You make delicious wines. We're going to be trying 3 of them today. But we're talking today about the neighborhoods of Russian River. So this is really a collaborative effort of a lot of the winemakers and grape growers in Russian River to more accurately define Russian River Valley. You know, it's not an attempt to break up Russian River into smaller AVAs. We do have one official AVA within Russian River that we'll be talking about today, the Green Valley. But the neighborhoods are more of an informal designation, but a way to talk about it, to talk about Russian River more specifically, because Russian River is a very, very large AVA. And it's hard to say that, for example, that the southern portion of the valley is the same climatically or the soil types as the northern part of the valley, just as an example. So we'll get into them a little bit, and we'll of course get Theresa's thoughts on the neighborhoods as well. She's been part of the panel that talks about these neighborhoods and tries to define what makes each one unique. But I want to introduce just a brief video that talks about the neighborhoods and really how this program was inspired. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we'll take a look here.
One of the things that attracted me to this area was how willing people are to help their neighbors.
To understand Russian River Valley, you can't just take a snapshot of the whole AVA. You have to break it down a little bit into these unique neighborhoods that have their own nuances, quirks, strengths, weaknesses, and passions.
As a winemaker who works with different neighborhoods within the Russian River Valley, I can appreciate all of them.
This is something that's a fluid discussion of some of the differences in the area. They're all highlighted by a similar thread.
We have a combination of climatic conditions combined with a diversity of soil types. In fact, we have more soil types than all of France.
To me, it's about discovering your favorite wine and not just getting the opportunity to taste that wine, but to actually have a chance to see and understand what is behind where it comes from.
To be a pioneer is a spark of creativity. It means that you aren't satisfied with the status quo. You're always sort of exploring, climbing the next hill, looking for the next vista, trying to see ways to improve your farming, ways to improve winemaking.
Best way to explore is coming out and letting the Russian River Valley surprise you.
So Theresa, maybe you could tell us just a little bit about your involvement with the neighborhoods program.
Yeah, so it was shortly after I started here at Gary Farrell. So maybe it was 2013, 14. I don't remember specifically, but a couple of years in a row, immediately after harvest, when the wines, the parents and expressive of the place. We weren't focused on white wines yet. So we sat down before the wines either were in barrel or had any, exposure to new oak whatsoever, so that we could blind taste. So fully blind setting. And each of us had a score sheet where we could write the aroma descriptors, the flavor descriptors. And there was also a checkbox of, I think we were scoring different qualities of the wine. And then this continued for years, for several years in a row. And it was winemakers and growers alike. We all got together to do these tastings in order to come up with a set of, qualitative descriptors identifying the differences between the neighborhoods. And when we taste these wines together today, it's really clear that these come from different climates, different soil types. Yes, they're coming from different winemakers as well. But, when you have the same winemaker making wines from these different neighborhoods, you can really see the difference among them. So it's pretty fantastic. And as Kevin was saying, the goal is not to establish different AVAs. It's really, we like to use this as a tool to educate buyers and consumers, for people to really enjoy the wines of the Russian River Valley and understand them a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. Education, I think, is so important when you're tasting wine. It's certainly not necessary to enjoy a good glass of wine, but the more that you can find out about it and maybe connect why it tastes that way, there's not too many other beverages that you can do that with, that you can drink and go, oh, I think this came from a cool climate, or this came from a sandy soil versus a clay soil. There's so much that goes into it. So we're going to focus on 3 neighborhoods today. We'll start out. I figured it would be nice to kind of follow the fog. That's how I decided the order of neighborhoods that we'll be talking about, because fog is one of the most defining characteristics of Russian River Valley, the way that it comes in through the Petaluma Gap in the south and fills up the valley from south to north in the evening, and then burns off from north to south in the morning. So you see different climate conditions based on where fog hits first in the evening and where it burns off first in the morning, as it's taking the opposite path, receding out to the coast. So we'll start with the Sebastopol Hills. I'm going to pull up a map here and just show everybody where Sebastopol Hills is at. Share the screen here. Okay, so the purple border that you can see is Russian River Valley. And then you see on the very south here, you have the Petaluma Gap, this low-lying east-west valley that allows all the fog to come in from the coast. And then it starts moving north as it gets around these Sebastopol Hills right here, this very southern tip of Russian River Valley. And you see this vineyard right here, McDonald Mountain. This is the vineyard that we'll be talking about today. I want to play the video of McDonald Mountain, and then we'll get Theresa's thoughts on the vineyard and the wine as well.
The McDonald Mountain Vineyard is located in the neighborhood called the Sebastopol Hills. It's sandwiched right in between the Petaluma Wind Gap and West Sonoma County. It's foresty and very rustic, and it just feels like you're in nature. And I think that the expression of the grapes in the wine translates all of those things into the finished product. My name is Theresa Heredia. I'm the winemaker for Gary Farrell Vineyards and Winery, and this is the McDonald Mountain Pinot Noir. I don't think I would get as much enjoyment from the winemaking if I didn't enjoy Kirk as much as I do.
I think we both like each other. She figured out how to best approach an ornery old grape grower like me. So we've got one heck of a relationship. She knows her business. The wines attest to her ability to make really great wines. I don't have this kind of relationship with all winemakers. It is such a special occasion when I open a McDonald Mountain. There isn't that much fruit available. There isn't that much wine available. And to open that bottle, that's the greatest joy I ever have, is that I've accomplished what I've worked at all year long. My name is Kirk Locke. I am vineyard manager and part owner of McDonald Mountain, and I grow great grapes.
How cute is he?
I know, right? He is fantastic. I mean, not just obviously an incredibly talented scientist and farmer, but he's just hilarious, and you gotta love him. Yeah, McDonald Mountain. I mean, saw some shots of the vineyard there. You might have noticed that it is very steep. It's planted on a mountain, as the name suggests. Theresa, what unique characteristics do you like about the vineyard and the wine that we're trying, the 2017 McDonald Mountain?
Yeah, so 3 of the really defining characteristics of the Sebastopol Hills and McDonald Mountain are the soil. And Kevin, if you have a sample back there, either Hallberg or McDonald Mountain to show, I have ravioli here for when we get to it.
Actually, I've got Hallberg right here.
Yeah, it's similar. It's Gold Ridge series, classic Gold Ridge series soil. It's very powdery, very silty. And there's one section at Hallberg that we call the beach. So it's very similar at McDonald Mountain. That's one very, unique defining characteristic. Because it's powdery, sandy, the roots can actually penetrate and access the water table. And that gives the growers the opportunity to dry farm. And what that does is gives kind of more powerful, concentrated wines in good vintages. And also it helps the grower to farm it so that the grapes express as much of the site as possible. And McDonald Mountain, in addition to the soil type, is very windy. So where it's located, Kevin, have you shown a map? Did we see a map yet?
Yeah, I'll pull that up again. You can keep talking, but I'll pull the map up.
So the McDonald Mountain Vineyard and the Sebastopol Hills is located in an area that's influenced by both the Petaluma Wind Gap, you can see right there. So Gap's Crown and the Petaluma Gap is just to the east there in the Rohnert Park, Cotati area. And this whole Petaluma Wind Gap flanks the area in between the Sonoma Coast, the Pacific Coast, and the Petaluma Wind Gap. It's sandwiched right in between, so it's influenced by both. And some of the blocks in the vineyard that are located up on the slope in the back of the vineyard just get pummeled by the wind. And so the clusters are notoriously tiny. The berries are really, really tiny and just packed with flavor. Power packed is a term that Kevin used once, and I told him I'm going to steal it.
Yeah.
And it's really true with this particular wine because of that reason. And the fog is the other really truly defining characteristic. So sometimes on a really cool harvest day, the fog doesn't burn off at all. But most days we have at least a few hours during the day where we get this nice intense sunshine, but the temperatures are always moderated by the fog. And so nighttime temperatures are in the 50s, high 40s to low 50s during the growing season. So we like to talk about the diurnal fluctuation, which is the change in temperature from the nighttime lows to the daytime highs. Well, the diurnal fluctuation is actually more narrow than in the middle reach, which we're going to talk about last. So there's a big difference in the fruit qualities of the wine. First of all, because it's so cool and because it's so windy, the vines really just hold onto their acidity. So acid is a truly defining characteristic of the wine itself, and you'll find that when you taste it. But also this really vibrant fruit, exotic fruit, and spices are another characteristic of the wines from this region. Part of that comes from the trees that are surrounding the area. There are lots of bay laurel trees. There are some eucalyptus trees as well, but you don't smell that predominantly. It's just the mixture. It's like smelling the Pinot Noir, the McDonald Mountain, is like taking a coastal walk here in Northern California. You can smell all the coastal air, the saline. You can smell the leaves, the trees, and everything in the soil. So it's a beautiful, very, typical Pinot character in this wine. So it's a Pinot lover's Pinot, and it's a beautiful food wine.
Yeah, definitely love this wine with Italian food. I think the tannin, the acidity, the spices that you were mentioning, excellent with Italian food, fennel sausage. be a good pairing here. It's one of my favorite vineyards that we work with, and 2017 was a pretty challenging year, but I know that you made the call to bring in some grapes, maybe a little bit earlier than we normally would have. But we saw this heat wave on the horizon, and you said, well, I better get these picks scheduled, because once that heat wave comes, these grapes are going to start ripening quickly.
There was no recovery period in 2017. The heat forecast was for such a long period of time that I didn't see any cooling forecast in the future for the grapes to recover. So that's why everything was on the brink of being ready at that point already. So I just, I scheduled as much as I could.
Yeah. Because I know for your style, making that bright, fresh style of wine, much easier, I would guess, to work with grapes that are a little bit under what you were expecting versus a little bit over.
I didn't want raisins
in terms of ripeness. So we do not want raisins. We don't make enough port to bring in all these raisins.
No.
Yeah.
And I don't find that for our vineyards and our style that we produce, jammy characteristics aren't really a terroir defining descriptor.
Right. We want food-friendly, ageable wines that have just vibrancy to them, and that's exactly what you've achieved.
Thanks.
So after we moved through the Petaluma Gap, the fog is coming through. It's rolling over the Sebastopol Hills. Around the same time, there's also fog that's rolling over the hills west of Sebastopol, the town, into this area called Green Valley. So Green Valley is the only neighborhood that is an official AVA, American Viticultural Area, defined at the same time as Russian River Valley in 1981. And we work with Hallberg Vineyard in Green Valley, which is also owned and farmed by Kirk Laka, who was just featured in this last video. So let me pull up a video of Hallberg Vineyard and let's see what's going on there.
Site is terribly important when you want to make quality Pinot Noir. It's a combination of things. So you need a site that is well drained, usually on a hill. And we're at the top of the hill right here, so water drains into both watersheds. Pinot Noir does not like heat. This hill, it has a natural flow of cool air that comes from the ocean because we sit so high. Soil imparts a lot of flavor. Same clone, same rootstock, different qualities, characters come through. We're on a Gold Ridge sandy clay loam.
It's so different from the rest of the vineyards that we work with. It's a different climate. It's a cool climate. And so the characteristics are extremely different from the stuff within the heart of the Russian River Valley. Out here, you get darker blue fruit flavors, and over in the Russian River Valley along West Side Road, Rocchioli, for example, you get more red fruit characteristics. Less earthy flavors, more floral. Out here, you get the more serious, bigger, robust flavors. So this is what makes Hallberg special.
Hallberg is very distinct in how it tastes versus some of the other wineries and vineyards that are even within a couple of miles of here. And Theresa can take each vintage and blend them a little bit different each year so that it's consistent Hallberg flavor every year.
Kirk and I have a really special relationship. We can joke with each other. I can ask him to pull leaves the way I want him to pull leaves. I can ask him to drop fruit the way I want to, and most of the time he'll say yes.
I like calling myself a paint salesman. I provide a palette of flavors for her to work with so that she can blend them to make the kind of wine she wants to make. She is a wonderful winemaker. She knows how to make a Pinot Noir. They're finesse, they're elegant, they're charming wines, and I'm really enjoying working with Theresa. I am very comfortable selling grapes to Gary Farrell Winery because they have the same goal as I do. Top quality fruit, top quality wines, they go hand in hand.
Once again, gotta love Kirk. Theresa was mentioning the soil out there. So this is a sample of the soil. I'm going to kind of shake it around so you can see how loose this soil is. That Gold Ridge sandy loam, very high sand content here. Pretty easy for the vines to dig down, get to that water table, because of course they do need water to survive. It's just that Kirk doesn't provide it in the form of irrigation. The vines get all the water they need from down in the ground. So it's nice to have this loose soil so that when they do get moisture in the vineyard, as far as the time scale of water draining to the water table goes, it's pretty quick, and the vines can dig through and get down to it. This stuff gets all over your pants when you walk through the vineyard. It's very dusty. Sometimes you'll hear Kirk call it moon dust. But Theresa, maybe you can tell us a little bit about working with the Hallberg Vineyard.
Yeah. So first of all, Kirk is one of my most favorite growers to work with. So I love that we work with two of his vineyards, and the wines are very different, even though they're not very far from one another. It's about a 10-minute drive from Hallberg to McDonald Mountain. And so the Hallberg Vineyard is really wonderful because it's located in the heart of the town of Sebastopol. It's right off of Highway 116, and the vineyard is on both sides of Highway 116. But you would think that because they're just across the road from each other, the blocks in the vineyard would pretty much taste the same, but no, they're really different. In fact, the soil is even a little different on the east side of Highway 116. It has a little bit more iron in the soil, I think, because it has more red color to it. It's a little rockier as well. Whereas the blocks on the west side of Highway 116 are this Goldridge series, classic powdery, silty, sandy loam that Kevin was just showing you. And so the fruit from that side tends to be really dark blue, like lots of blueberry flavor. We get a few different clones. We get 828, 667, Pomard, and 777 from that side. And those tend to be, like I said, kind of the heart and soul of our Russian River Selection blend. And 2017 has a little bit more vibrant red fruit to it because of the way that we picked that season, as Kevin was explaining. But usually in a vintage that's warmer and a smaller crop, like say 2015 or 16, the wines tend to be dark and earthy, blackberry, cassis, very brambly. You get a lot of that earthiness, like a fruit fresh off of the bush. And so it's a really special wine because it's in the cool climate that it is, and because of the soil. I like to use a good percentage of whole cluster in both Hallberg and McDonald Mountain. It works really well because I find that the stems ripen a little bit more on par with the fruit in a cooler climate. Whereas in a warmer climate, it gets hot. And so the fruit ripens pretty quickly. The stems don't really have a chance to harden off. And so in these cooler climates at Hallberg, McDonald Mountain, I'll use easily 40%, sometimes 50, 60. I did 100% whole cluster at Hallberg in 2018. And we did it in an oak tank, and you would never know when you smell and taste it. You'd never know that it was 100% whole cluster. And so that really helps to express the site. It really helps to increase the site specificity, the terroir characteristics of the wine when you include at least a little bit of whole cluster. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, definitely. The story of the stems is the story of the vineyard for sure. This is the first time hearing about this 100% whole cluster Hallberg in the oak tank. So I'm excited to taste that. I'm guessing that's part of the inspiration series.
Oh yeah.
So, okay. So very limited amount of that available, probably 50 or so cases. So
yep, exactly.
Gotta make sure to get my hands on one of those.
So the difference between the two, which I didn't get into very much, is that in a usual vintage, you would see a deeper, darker expression of the fruit in the Hallberg. They're a little bit more similar from the 2017 vintage for the reasons that I've explained. But the McDonald Mountain definitely has more of that exotic fruit that I was explaining to you. And Hallberg is more fruit forward, usually.
Yeah, really popular wine. I know no one has ever come into the tasting room and not liked the Hallberg. Pinot is so different, and so many people like different styles of Pinot. Some people want more of a savory, earthy, coastal style. Some people want that bigger, bolder, more fruit forward, and everything in between. But Hallberg, I think, hits that right note for everyone, no matter what sort of Pinot you enjoy. It's got a little something for everyone. So.
And McDonald could be more tart, right? More acidic. And so, if you like nice, tangy, tart, juicy wines, you're going to love the McDonald Mountain. Hallberg's a little bit softer. It doesn't have quite as much acidity because it's not as windy as the Sebastopol Hills. Right.
But still with that nice, long growing season due to the cooler air that they have down there. Mm-hmm. So the last wine and vineyard and neighborhood that we're talking about is the Rocchioli Vineyard. So talk about a legend, Joe Rocchioli. He's been doing it for 7 decades or so, and that's no exaggeration. He's literally been growing grapes for that long. And we're so happy to work with Rocchioli because there's very, very few wineries that get fruit from Rocchioli, and we're happy to be one of them. So let me pull up a video that features Theresa talking with Joe a little bit.
I've been here all my life, 81 years. I just about know every rock in this place. My dad leased the ranch in 1937. At the time, there was about 50 acres old vineyard. It's a family thing, and just grow enough grapes for our family and make enough wines to make a living. In 68, I planted a French of Pinot Noir on half of it. And I got my budwood from some old man over in Napa Valley. He showed me these grapes and they're beautiful. I thinned it, got rid of some of the green bunches and second crop. I pulled a few leaves. I did stuff that wasn't even invented yet. So, but it was instinct, I guess. There was something I thought maybe would help the vines.
The location is magical. The vines are bathed in fog every morning. The warmer the inland temperatures, the more fog comes in, and the fog goes along the river, which is right here. And that actually cools the grapes down at night and also in the morning. But then during the day, the grapes are drenched in this warm sun. The riverbed soil is amazingly rich and just creates these intense wines that have elegance and finesse, unlike any other vineyards that we work with.
You got to know what you're doing when you're making wines. I got a lot of confidence in Theresa's winemaking. I have a list of 30 wineries that want my grapes, and they know damn well they're not going to get them. First comes Gary Farrell, William Asylum, and us. Gary Farrell's on one of the top ones on the list. My relationship with Theresa, the company has been great. I trust them.
Gotta love Joe for sure. He's, Joe is part of that group of the pioneering grape growers in Russian River Valley. And, one of the things I really admire about Joe and some of these other vineyard owners in that pioneering phase in the 50s and 60s is a lot of these things they didn't know when they started out. They didn't know how to grow Pinot Noir perfectly in Russian River Valley. It had never been done before, but they started. A quote I try to live by is that perfection is the enemy of progress. If you are waiting for everything to be perfect, you're never going to start and nothing's ever going to happen. And so Joe, he had this instinct that, I think I can grow these amazing grapes. I think Pinot Noir is going to do well in Russian River because of the climates and the soils and everything that we've been talking about. And so he just did it. And it's easy to look back now with hindsight and go, well, yeah, of course, that was a great decision. But in 1968, it wasn't necessarily a great decision. We know that it was now. But what if nobody had been asking for Pinot Noir from Russian River?
It was
Joe
brave.
He was brave. He made that choice, and he's rewarded for it today. So Rocchioli, Theresa, what can you tell us about Rocchioli?
So Rocchioli is a beautiful historic site. It's located literally adjacent to the Russian River. And so
I'll pull up a map. You keep talking, but I'll show everyone where this is at.
So one of the defining characteristics of the site is not only that it's located adjacent to the river and therefore the temperatures are moderated by the fog that the river is pooling like a conveyor belt from the Pacific Ocean through the Russian River Valley and alongside this vineyard. It's also the soil type. So you can imagine classic riverbed, gravelly loam. So you can see a little bit, if I hold it up close, there's definitely more gravelly, rocky bits in this than at the Hallberg vineyard. So the roots don't penetrate quite as deeply. And the wines can sometimes be a little bit more fruit forward and sometimes more rustic, but not in a tannic way. The wines from this neighborhood tend to be more supple, red fruit driven, very floral, so very cherry, like cherry compote. And rose petal is kind of a classic floral aroma that I tend to get from the Rochioli vineyard. The tannin is not forefront, and neither is the acid, even though I like to pick early and I like to capture natural acidity. Acid is not a defining characteristic of the wines like it is at McDonald Mountain. The wines don't have as much tannin. This is mostly old Pommard or old Wente selection, as some people like to call it. It's some budwood that Joe got at one time and planted there. And so it's really Rochioli. There are some other growers who've planted it who've gotten budwood from Rochioli, and they call it Rochioli as it should be named, but Joe doesn't have that kind of an ego. So our wine, because of the way that I like to make the wines and because of the way that we picked in 2017, this one has that classic cherry, just red fruit, soft on the palate, really welcoming, really easy to drink. It has a little bit more of a warm climate kind of expression of Pinot Noir, but it has lots of Pinot typicity, some California Pinot typicity, but not that really ripe, jammy character in your face. So more subtle, I think. Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely got a more subtle, just the entire thing about it. But that's one of the reasons why it's so wonderful with food. This is an age-worthy wine, but it's not as, it definitely doesn't have as much of the tartness that you get from the McDonald Mountain and the Hallberg. So if you're a person who likes something that's, you know, a little softer, a little bit more approachable when the wine is still in this younger stage, the 2017, this is going to be right up your alley. It's super popular with our club members. We make a very limited amount of this wine, so this is designated just for our membership program. But just so many great things to say about the Rochioli vineyard, the family, the wine. It's really killer. We actually have a question from McRosty Vineyard, one of our neighbors up the road. Hello.
McRosty.
They're wondering what are some of the challenges that you face at the Rochioli Vineyard? Yeah,
so Pinot Noir in the Russian River Valley, some of the challenges are always, you know, mold and mildew pressure, because it is foggy. And because it's located next to the river, that fog really does, you know, it can cause some moisture issues in the vineyard. So that's always something. But also, it can get warm. We are in a cool climate. Pinot Noir is very delicate. It has very thin skins. And because the Middle Reach neighborhood that you saw on the map is not very far from Dry Creek Valley, which we know is famous for Zinfandel, it can get pretty warm in this neighborhood. And, you know, sometimes you can see the ripening overnight, and you can go from, you know, underripe to overripe in a really short period of time. So it requires a lot of attention to detail. And because it's right down the road from us, I visit Rochioli more than any other vineyard. I also like to pop in and say hi to Joe and Tom during harvest. So it's a great thing. Those are just a couple of the challenges.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're certainly enjoying the sunny, warm weather today, but you know, this time of year we should probably be seeing a little bit cooler, a little bit more rainfall. So of course that climate is always going to be a challenge. There are ways to respond, and the growers and winemakers do a great job of it, but it's always going to be a challenge that we face. So any final thoughts on the neighborhoods, Theresa, before we wrap this up?
No, these are three of my favorites, Kevin. Good job picking the highlights to really see the differences between the neighborhoods. These are really great because Pinot Noir, because it is thin-skinned, is very transparent. It's a delicate varietal, and I like to express that, you know, the complexity, the delicacy of Pinot Noir. And I think that these three neighborhoods really let that shine. So. Yeah.
Well, you make our jobs easy with these amazing wines, and we have this amazing facility for tasting that we're welcoming in folks for outdoor tasting right now, socially distanced, very safe. So we invite everyone to come visit and try these wines and so many of the others. We picked 3 out of a portfolio of 30 plus wines, and that's just in a single vintage. We also have library vintages. So there's so many wines, whatever your preferred style is. We have something delicious that's going to hit the right note for you. So please visit our website, GaryFarrellWinery.com, and take a look at a tasting appointment. I will say that we are experiencing a lot of folks that are eager to get out and and see something new after being cooped up at home for the last year. So we encourage you to plan in advance if you're looking to plan a trip out here. Reservations do pick up quickly. So
Kevin, if
please,
people,
Theresa,
go ahead. If people want to learn more about the neighborhoods and taste wines from Gary Farrell and understand the neighborhoods, what would you suggest?
So definitely when you come in and do a tasting here, neighborhoods is a concept that we focus on. We also are in the process of relaunching our neighborhoods tasting, which is something that we offered pre-pandemic, where you have a chance to come in and try 6 different Pinot Noirs, all from different neighborhoods within Russian River, and really see the progression in style from this more acidity-driven, darker fruit, more savory, all the way through something that's a little bit more supple, more red fruit, more floral characteristics, and everything in between, with a custom food pairing for each wine as well. So that is something that we are relaunching very soon. We're excited to feature this program because we love Russian River. The collaboration among the growers and the winemakers in Russian River is so fantastic. I think, sometimes it surprises visitors to the Valley how closely we work with who you might think of as our competitors, but we just don't see it that way. I don't think really any of the winemakers in Russian River see it that way. We're all in this together. Whatever challenges we face together, and whatever we can learn from each other, we certainly want to go that direction versus, trying to be too competitive. The better time we have in Russian River, the more visitors we'll have, the better wine that will be here. And that's really the goal. Just as Kirk said in one of the videos, top quality fruit, top quality wine. It all goes hand in hand.
Right. Cool.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Hopefully you learned a little something, and we hope to see you in person next year at Waupun down at the Bacara in Santa Barbara. And until then, have a great rest of your day, and please get in contact if we can help you with any other questions that you have about Russian River, neighborhoods, Pinot Noir, whatever it is. We're an open book. So
thanks for joining, everybody, and thanks World of Pinot Noir. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you so much. Everybody enjoy your Wednesday afternoon. Cheers.